Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 31. Accumulative Layers of Pressure. Jun Xie remained silent. If he had not transmigrated over, Jun Moxie would certainly have continued being a debauchee. Jun Moxie possessed a profound level of insight? Obviously not. However, should the day of Jun family's revival arrive, Jun Xie would still remain faithful to his role as a debauchee. In addition, if his hands ever felt itchy, then all he needed to do was go assassinate some of those men who deserved to die. Even if you say that, I would still choose to continue messing around as a debauchee in the future. Jun Xie looked at Jun Wui with a smile. As long as third uncle is cured, you will become a great tree that can shelter me. When that happens, I will still be the Jun Moxie of old. Who dares to move against me? Jun Wui laughed. Do whatever you want. Besides, from what I can see, there is no way anyone can get the better out of you, you brat. As of now, the two companies had finished the task set by Jun Xie for them. Each company leader, platoon leader and squad leader stood before their own men. Jun Xie turned and walked over to them. From this moment onwards, your two companies will treat one another as your ultimate rival. For now, I do not know the details regarding you people. That is why I will temporarily not be giving any new training instructions. For the next 10 days, all your training program will follow the original one. However, Jun Xie added emphasis to his tone. Every set of training will be increased by 3 times that of the original. Did I make myself clear? Every one of them gasped in shock. 3 days later, there will be a contest between squads. Each platoon is to select a squad to enter the contest. 5 days from now, each platoon select your best men. They will then enter the contest. 7 days from now, both companies will have a showdown. In the contest between the two companies, the company leader of the losing company will go up the stage, face all 300 men and slap yourself in the face. Understood? Silence. I will repeat my question. Understood? Jun Xie asked in an imposing manner. Understood. Everyone roared. The two company leaders will preside over the training programs. I do not care what type of training program you implement. I am only interested in watching the results of the contest. I would like to see which one of you will go up the stage and slap yourself in front of 300 men after losing the contest. This contest will be held once a month. The company leader who suffered 3 losses in a row will go up the stage and *ked and bark like a dog. When the time comes, I will gather everyone in the residence to let them enjoy this spectacle. As of now, I have no interest in knowing any of your names. That will have to wait until half a year later. I have already prepared the names for both companies. First company's name would be Sky Raiders. Second company's name would be Soul Eaters. However, only the strong would have the qualifications to join these two companies. As of this moment, none of you are qualified. Everything will depend on whether you can meet my requirements. If you can, then I will memorize all your names. But if you cannot, then you will be nothing more than a pile of bones by then. After you return, you must set a time limit for things like eating meals or going to the toilet. Those who end up breaking the allocated time will be punished heavily without question. No matter what the activity may be, a timetable must be established. Each company is to come up with its own punishment. Once that is done, hand over the details to me. Now, go follow my commands. Dismiss. The two newly appointed company leaders had yet to experience the joy of being promoted. but were instead slapped with a burden resembling a trip to hell. Wearing a bitter face akin to eating bitter gourd, they ruthlessly led their respective company away. Everyone had the same line of thought. Not only were they exempt from going up the stage to slap themselves, they had the opportunity to witness the losing side slap themselves in the face. Then, there was the even more interesting show where they have to strip an asterisk ked and bark like a dog. This will be interesting. As for the contest, what was there to fear? They will just have to increase their training intensity. If 3 times was not enough, then 5 times. If 5 times was not enough, then 10 times. A training where they place their own lives on the line. From this moment onwards, the 300 house guards of the Jun family had officially stepped into a life of living hell. Far away from the training grounds, Grandpa Jun exhaled a long breath and gently waved his hands, indicating for old Pang to leave together with him. House Master, do I still need to get the young master to come over for questioning? Is there any need to question him anymore? Just let him do as he please, Grandpa Jun replied in a relaxed tone of voice, his heart feeling very refreshed. House Master, why did the young master only single out the company leader for punishment? Shouldn't the rest of the losing soldiers be punished as well? Hey, old Pang. If you were placed in the company leader's shoes and your company of soldiers lost, resulting in you having to openly slap yourself in the face, and even possibly being forced to strip an asterisk ked before barking like a dog, how would you feel inside? Would you spare those platoon leaders under you? In similar fashion, after the platoon leader had his fill of the company leader's wrath, how well would he treat the squad leaders under him? Each level carries its own degree of pressure and responsibility. Each layer brings an even greater amount of pressure. By the time it reached the ordinary soldier's level, that thunderous pressure would accumulate to the point of being unprecedented. This is a form of peer pressure that was never heard of before. However, it is an excellent method to train soldiers. For Moxie to come up with this type of plan, if the army were to have him as a general, he would certainly shine as a great talent. Grandpa Jun felt very pleased. Oh. So that was why. Old Pang thought to himself. This move from the young master is quite malicious. Malicious? No, it is not. Grandpa Jun looked as though he was considering something as he organized his thoughts and state of mind. This is the only way to make full use of their abilities while allowing the one who holds absolute power to focus on other matters. This is also the most cost-effective method of employing men. From a business perspective, this is the best method of management, be it the management of the military or the management of the state. At least, I have yet to find a better way of doing so. This brat is something else. Moxie. He. Jun Zhantian's eyes squinted as his old face smiled without restraint. Fortunately, His Majesty, the Emperor did not agree to the marriage. Otherwise, this old man would have ended up committing an error. Jun Wui immediately went to arrange for some men, placing a responsibility on each of them to go out seeking the herbs. The Jun family's medical warehouse had no small amount of goods stocked within, but the herbs listed by Jun Xie are quite rare. Those herbs had to be bought from the outside pharmacies. Jun Xie urgently hurried back to his own room. He did not even have any time to check his trophies, as he closed both the door and windows before sitting down cross-legged. Today, Jun Xie spent a considerable amount of time walking through the streets. During this period of time, he felt the existence of an abnormal reaction coming from the undulating white mist within his sea of consciousness. However, what surprised Jun Xie was that this feeling disappeared after he reached home. This had caused Jun Xie no small amount of surprise. After calming himself down, he carefully exercised his arts again, but was unable to detect the presence of any abnormality. This caused him to become puzzled. Could it be that there were external factors in play here? There was something else that caused Jun Xie to become greatly puzzled. While he was not practicing his arts, the white mist would gush out from his sea of consciousness without his realization. The mist would then flow along Jun Xie's meridians for one cycle before returning. It was during such an occurrence that the white mist would appear the longest, bringing with it a great deal of benefits for Jun Xie's body. However, whenever Jun Xie tried wholeheartedly to exercise the arts, only a slight trace of white mist would appear. However, after being directed to flow through Jun Xie's meridians, the results were inferior to that when it had appeared on its own. The third thing, which Jun Xie could not wrap his head around, was the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Judging by its name and the bizarre circumstances of its existence, this skill must naturally be amazing. However, ever since he practiced to the point of being able to sense it, the energy flow within his meridians had remained the size of a hair. No matter how much effort Jun Xie put in, he was unable to increase its size. Even though this small amount was extremely solid, it was convenient to use and was of superior quality. Its quantity, on the other hand, left much to be desired. In comparison, the internal forces he had in his past life was as thick as a finger, flowing through the meridians. But the current energy flow within his meridians was only as thick as a silky hair. There was a great deal of difference, almost incomparable. However, if one were to compare the quality between both, the internal energy of his past life was akin to a hemp rope, while his current energy flow was akin to the legendary divine silk, which cannot be harmed by even precious swords. It must be noted that this was only an estimate, as these two were simply incomparable. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 32. Homesick. This energy flow seemed delicate, but was in fact unyieldingly tough. Nonetheless, Jun Xie remained unsatisfied because this level of energy flow can only be considered the beginning stages. This energy flow could barely be used to do anything. It may have been useful in playing tricks and secretly affecting results while gambling, but what about a life and death battle against a sword user? This level of energy flow is simply insufficient. Even if it is the divine silkworm's silk, whose single thread can support the weight of up to 200 Gene 120.9 kilograms, a highly commendable capacity, Jun Xie wanted more. He wanted 100 or 1,000 of those threads to come together and become his source of internal energy. His desire to nurture the energy flow to become greater to the point of filling his meridians caused Jun Xie to feel that he still has a long way to go. However, there was one advantage in his current situation, and that was his ability to use sneak attacks, which were truly mysterious and imperceptible. Jun Xie closed his eyes as he evaluated the possible uses of the energy flow in his body. Slowly, he entered a state of disconnection from self and others. Li residence. Tang Wanli rushed aggressively towards the Li residence, backed by a huge group of men. However, he now felt as though he had instead run headfirst into a pile of cotton. The Li residence's head, Li Yuran, received him with a warm, affectionate and hospitable manner, causing grandfather Tang to feel a little uncomfortable, as he was not able to find any faults to argue about. Although he had determined to throw a fit, when faced against Li Yuran's cordial and calm smile, he found himself unable to do so. However, the act of keeping the pent-up anger on a leash was very hard to bear. After drinking a cup of tea, he slammed it down heavily, resulting in the teacup breaking into pieces. Li Yuran continued smiling gently as he said, "Come, quickly prepare another cup of tea for the old duke. Then, his voice suddenly became heavy. I was too careless earlier. Quick! Go get the top-grade Han Yen tea from my grandfather's room. I remember my grandfather had once mentioned that Duke Tang's favorite tea is the top-grade Han Yen tea. After finished instructing the servants, he lowered his voice again, looking apologetically at Grandfather Tang Wanli. Senior Duke, this junior instructed my men on your behalf earlier. I hope you do not mind. Also, if this junior made a mistake, then please point it out. I will immediately get the servants to change it for you. Grandfather Tang stared with a wide-open mouth, just like a dog that had bitten a hedgehog. He was unable to utter a single word. After staying speechless for a long time, he finally asked, "Get Li Feng, Li Zhen, those three little beasts out here now. This senior has something to ask of them." Li Yuran revealed an obvious, reluctant expression on his face. To be able to receive pointers from the senior duke is certainly a blessing for those juniors. However, senior duke's timing is a little off. Those three had committed a mistake and are currently undergoing disciplinary punishment. May I ask of the duke to show kindness and wait momentarily for the three of them to finish up their punishment before coming to receive your pointers? The Tang family members who heard this became startled. The whole group of people headed into the Li residence's disciplinary hall. Seeing how Li Feng and the other two were beaten into a bloody mess, Grandfather Tang, who was brimming in anger, found his fury dissipating by half. He settled for only asking them a few questions. However, he heard from them that the source of this matter was the Meng family. Meng Haizu had actually coveted Tang Yuan's fiancée for a long time. As for Li Zhen and the other two, they were punished for their involvement in this matter. Hearing all this, Grandfather Tang's fury towards the Li family was mostly dissipated. However, his rage towards the Meng family surged to new thunderous heights. After quickly saying his goodbyes, Grandfather Tang immediately led his men back up the horses and sped their way towards the Meng family. Li Yuran personally accompanied them out, his face showing a sorry expression as he kept apologizing for being a bad host. He earnestly bid them farewell as he watched Grandfather Tang lead his group of men away. Straightening himself, Li Yuran's face fleetingly revealed a trace of elegant smile. In his eyes, a strange chill too appeared for the briefest of moment before disappearing. Lifting his robes, he entered the residence, his actions unhurried and relaxed, not showing any trace of anger. The sky gradually became darker. Suddenly, a thunder broke out and the rain started falling. As the rain fell harder and harder, it seemed as though both heaven and earth had become one. Li Yuran suddenly stopped walking. Raising his head, he observed the curtain of rain. He lightly laughed as he shook his head and whispered, "It seems that the Duke Tang will have to extend his stay at the Meng family, ha ha ha." Little Ku sat on the window, her hands holding onto the incense pot as she stared outside at the heavy rain. Her eyes had already become moist. After finishing up with his training, Jun Xie straightened himself and walked up behind Little Ku. He gently asked, "Little Ku, what are you thinking about?" Little Ku screamed out in shock. Turning around, she was momentarily at a loss before she straightened herself and bowed. "Young master, what are you thinking?" Jun Xie went to the side and sat down on a chair. By force of habit, he raised his leg up. Observing the little Lolita before him, she was a tender little likable girl. Jun Xie had always been unable to stop himself from teasing her. That was also why he felt concerned after seeing her filled with deep thoughts. I was thinking. In a few days' time, the autumn festival will arrive." Little Ku's eyes seemed on the verge of tears. I still remember. 3 years ago during the autumn festival. When I was 9. I went with my father and mother. Back then. I was so cheerful, so happy, father. Mother. 2 big drops of tears rolled down, falling onto the ground. She was no longer able to continue her sentence. Then where is your father now? Just as Jun Xie asked this question, he remembered that little Ku's father was a squad leader serving under the Jun family. He had followed Jun Moxie's big brother Jun Moyo out for an expedition, never to return. Little Ku's mother eventually died of illness due to sadness and overwork. Before her death, she sent little Ku to the Jun residence, beseeching the Jun family to take care of her daughter. As of now, little Ku was an orphan with no father and mother. Thinking back, that brat Jun Moxie had always treated little Ku badly, cursing at her all the time, but she had instead endured quietly. Jun Xie could not help but feel pity for her. Sighing lightly, he reached out and stroked her head, but remained silent. Hearing the words autumn festival, he calculated the days and finally realized that the mid-autumn festival will soon be upon them. Jun Xie's heart suddenly felt sour. It seemed that I would have to celebrate this traditional Chinese festival by myself in this world. Little Ku felt Jun Xie lightly stroking her hair. His way of treatment was surprisingly soft. Even though he did not speak a word, she could feel Jun Xie's pity and heartfelt apology. A burst of warmth suddenly enveloped her, as though a little sister that had left home had suddenly bumped into her big brother. Her heart was awash with a soft, cordial feeling. She suddenly felt that this debauchee who had always cursed at her had at this moment become the one closest person to her. This change in feeling was very unexpected and bizarre. She could not help but lean her small body closer to Jun Xie's. Feeling the warmth from Jun Xie's body, she felt as though the heavy rain outside had become something that she was no longer concerned about. After a long time had passed, Jun Xie stroked little Ku's hair again and said, "Get a good rest. It is better if you go get some sleep. I am going out for a bit." "Young master, it is raining heavily right now. Where are you going?" Little Ku felt confused and became concerned. "What if you fall sick from the rain? I will go prepare raining gear for you." "I will be fine." Jun Xie smiled faintly, his face painted with an indifferent expression. He grabbed a bamboo rain hat and placed it on his head before opening the doors, heading out into the heavy rain with a straight stature. Little Ku's face was filled with worry. She could sense that currently the young master was suffering from an unspeakable pain and anguish. Sensing Jun Xie's disturbed emotions, the Hongjun pagoda within his sea of consciousness rose up and began exuding the white mist. The white mist then flowed through Jun Xie's blood and flow of qi as it made a cycle through Jun Xie's meridians, as though it was trying to uplift Jun Xie's current state of melancholy. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 33. A small shop within the heavy rain. The rain pitter-pattered on the bamboo rain hat. Jun Xie left the Jun residence swiftly through the side door and strolled his way into the main street. The main street, which had been bustling with activities and pedestrians, was now empty due to the sudden heavy downpour. The shops on both sides, however, were brimming with crowds of people. Every now and again, the sounds of either laughter or curses can be heard coming out from the shops. Under the heavy downpour, the clamorous noise seemed as though it had merged together with both heaven and earth. Jun Xie strolled alone within the heavy rain, watching as the rain transformed into a curtain between heaven and earth. As the rain pitter-pattered on his bamboo rain hat, Jun Xie felt his own insignificance and loneliness. So what if he had been the world's #1 assassin in his past life? So what if he had been granted a great opportunity to transcend death, transmigrating into a different world? So what if he managed to obtain the immeasurably mysterious treasure, the Hongjun Pagoda? So what if he has the opportunity to practice the mysterious art of unlocking heaven's fortune? In the end, he was but a droplet of water amidst an ocean between heaven and earth. So diminutive, so solitary, so alone. The predecessors will never meet their ancestors. The successors will never meet their descendants. Leisurely studying heaven and earth, and yet alone and inferior, Jun Xie laughed bitterly as he shook his head. He thought to himself that he should have written this poem. Born in another world, he was truly a man without precedence and without a descendant. The true descendant of Yan and Huang in this world was none other than himself. The heavy rain and its accompanying fog was extremely heavy. Water covered every inch of the ground. The rain and fog obscured the skies, causing everything to become illusory and hazy. Even the surrounding downpour seemed to have lost its sound. Jun Xie suddenly felt as though everything was a dream. Every single person and every single matter no longer existed. There was only him, walking alone through the heavy rain. Jun Xie suddenly felt as though he was a ghost. Or perhaps he was simply sleepwalking. His heavy footsteps resounded in the rain and yet it sounded so far away. This incomplete feeling caused Jun Xie, who was a cold-blooded assassin, to feel vulnerable and weak. He suddenly found himself facing a dark place and realized that he had unconsciously exited the main street into a narrow alley. In the midst of the rain, a bamboo pole stood tilted from a shop, singled out as it hung conspicuously. From within came the smell of wine. The only way to solve sorrows was to shut it out. The only way to make worries disappear was wine. Jun Xie hesitated for a moment before entering into the wine shop. The shop had barely anyone within it. It had 15 tables. Yet all of them were empty. Considering how heavy the rain was, it was only natural for the shop's business to be affected. Especially when considering how small this shop was. But, within a corner of the shop, one person sat. Wearing a face-concealing bamboo rain hat, he sat down and helped himself. He seemed to be entertaining himself, but it seemed more as though he was feeling solitary and lonely. Jun Xie randomly ordered 2 side dishes and a jug of wine. He then sat silently in a corner, helping himself to it as well. He was alone in a small shop within the heavy rain. This cup I toast to those I've killed in my past life. Forgive me, for there is no chance for you to have revenge. Gulp. This cup I toast to those whose life I will take in my new life. Forgive me, for you are fated to die by my hands. Cheers. This cup I toast to my master and fellow brother and sisters. I wish you success in your missions. May you all be able to retire early and live a peaceful life. This cup I toast. Jun Xie drank alone, one cup after the other. Without making a single noise, he poured all his emotions, all his lamentations, all his loneliness into the cups of wine and drank them all away. Everything flowed together with the wine into his stomach. From today onwards, in this world, I am Jun Moxie. Jun Xie. The #1 assassin from another world is nothing more than a distant memory. The wine of the small shop was nothing remarkable. It felt slightly weak in taste. As someone who was used to drinking high-grade wines, this wine was actually a bit difficult for Jun Xie to drink. However, Jun Xie's mind at this moment was not considering whether the wine was good or not. Even if he were to be given the celestial fairy wine, he would not be able to taste any of it. All he could feel now was bitterness, tartness and sorrow. Within this unfamiliar world, this will be the only time that he indulged in these feelings of weakness. From now on, I will thread the path of the evil monarch. An iron-blooded path. From this moment on, I will utilize the mountain of bones and ocean of blood from my past to achieve my unparalleled reputation as the evil monarch once more. The otherworldly evil monarch is I, Moxie. Yet another cup was downed. But Jun Xie had yet to feel drowsy. He simply continued pouring one cup after another, gulping it down. Jun Xie did not realize that his strange act where he casted everything he had encountered aside, as though he was the only one within this world, had completely cut him off from everything: the skies, the ground, the wind, the rain. It was an independent loneliness of a person forsaken by his own world. The faint feelings of joy, solitude, and loneliness, all merged perfectly into one upon his body. It was only at this moment that Jun Xie remained Jun Xie, the mysterious number 1 assassin, and not Jun Moxie. In the corner of the shop, the only customer who had only given Jun Xie a glance when he came in was now staring intently at Jun Xie. He watched as Jun Xie sat alone, drinking away his sorrows, exuding an elegant form of loneliness, his tolerance deep and far beyond the average person, causing him to become curious. Jun Xie himself did not know how much wine he had drank. He only continued raising his cup. As he was about to drink another cup, he suddenly heard someone spoke out. "This brother is a remarkable drinker. Now that it is raining heavily outside, there is but the two of us here. Since we had such a fateful meeting, what do you say we drink together?" Jun Xie raised his head and saw that the customer had already placed down his bamboo rain hat, revealing a dignified face, showing a prestigious aura without being angry, his gaze as soft as water as he smiled at Jun Xie. Jun Xie laughed. He reached out, removed the bamboo rain hat on his head, and left it hanging behind. The anxious autumn wind and rain brings a halt to men. For us to be meeting here like this is indeed the work of fate. Since it is fate, why should we not drink together? Come. The other party did not expect Jun Xie to be so young and was momentarily startled before laughing. Indeed, observing fate is better than offering respects. He then ordered a few more dishes and 2 jugs of wine. Holding the wine cup, he came over and sat before Jun Xie. He smiled and asked, "A magnificent youngster such as you is truly a rarity in this city. I wonder which great family does this younger generation hail from?" "Great family's younger generation?" Jun Xie gave out a laugh and replied in disdain. "Floating namelessly through the world, treating the human world as a game. Ask not the gentleman his name." Could it be that in this brother's eyes, only someone from the great families can possess an outstanding demeanor? Oh. Hee. This is really a mistake on my part. Then please consider this cup my punishment. The middle-aged man raised his cup and gulped it down, his movements casual and free of care. Observing his face, Jun Xie had since deduced that this person was no average person. The aura emitted from his brows were rich and coercive. Every move made was innately elegant, indicating great skill and care. A few spiritual forces kept probing inside the small shop from the outside, believed to be from this person's bodyguards. This person must be someone with a high position and not easy to meet. To see such an individual admit his own mistakes towards a random person and even smile as he punished himself, Jun Xie felt his stance towards this person changing. He felt that sitting together and drinking wine together with this kind of individual was not an unworthy act. "May I ask for younger brother's esteemed name?" That man gulped down the wine as he watched Jun Xie. Jun Xie's aura of indifference caused this man to become very interested in his identity. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 34. Disagreeable words. Wandering through the world. Must chance meetings end up becoming acquaintances? What you and I wish for is to be able to drink wine happily. After finished drinking, we will go our separate ways and may never miss today. The name is but a mark. Would it be a fortune if you can recall it? Would it be a misfortune if you missed it? Jun Xie remained immersed within his realm of sadness. Naturally, he would not give out his real name. If he had said out the words Jun Moxie, who knows if this man might end up panicking and flee out even in this heavy rain. After all, his notorious reputation as a debauchee can be considered quite the lethal object. Floating namelessly through the world, treating the human world as a game. Ask not the gentleman his name. Wandering through the world. Must chance meetings end up becoming acquaintances? The middle-aged man repeated the words. He could not help but be moved by those words. Good sentence. A truly good sentence. I did not expect that this young brother could utter such great words. Not even a learned scholar may be able to replicate this feat. It seemed I was being rude again. Looking at Jun Xie, he laughed leisurely. Little brother's logic is reasonable. It is I who was too rigid in following customs. I am willing to accept another cup as punishment. Jun Xie hastily stopped him. You keep drinking left and right while I have not even drunk a single cup. You are not by chance just finding an excuse to drink more than me, are you? The man became startled before breaking into laughter. He gulped down his cup before wiping his mouth. Even though this wine is nameless, it can still be considered a good wine, strong and spicy. A real man should be drinking this wine. True, for the sake of drinking more of this wine. Finding some more excuses is nothing. This wine? This wine is considered good wine? Jun Xie sneered. I say, brother, could it be that you have never had any good wine? This wine is only something you drink a little of when you have no better option at hand. If this kind of wine can be considered a good wine, then won't there be countless good wine in this world? The man's eye lit up as he said. Old Song's wine shop may not be big, but this wine is highly reputed in this city. All wine lovers treat it with reverence. If it were not raining today, then this place would have been a full house by now. That is also why you and me can enjoy this wine today. This is a lucky day for both you and me. You may not know this, but Old Song only sell 20 jugs of wine per day, 10 in the afternoon and 10 in the evening. He will not sell even a jug more. If your words were to be heard by Old Song, I fear he will not let you go. Ha ha ha. You are a really great person. To think that you can make me smile at a time when I am feeling so depressed. Jun Xie had originally not wanted to laugh, but could no longer hold it in at this moment. How laughable. Such a weak wine actually has a limited supply. The wines that this young master has had before were at least 100 times stronger than this. These words were in no way boastful. This strength of this wine was at best only at 20% of a sorghum wine. In terms of quality, the wine was also slightly turbid. For Jun Xie, who was accustomed to drinking the world's finest wine in his past life, this wine was indeed inferior. In fact, people from the modern era might not even be willing to drink this wine. After all, the wine seemed turbid, as though it was lacking in hygiene. The middle-aged man's face became somewhat unsightly. Little brother, I can see that you are an elegant scholar, but how can you say something like this? Rice can be eaten in whatever way we like, but the same cannot be done with words. Even if you are to compare with the wine of the royal palace, this I have also had the opportunity to try it. In comparison, it only had some extra flavor of luxury, and instead less spicy and vigorous. It has less ability to arouse a man's blood. In my opinion, this wine is a fine wine that can rarely be found in this world. Little brother, saying things like the wine that you've tried before was 100 times stronger than this wine is simply too much. Hee. Oh. You do not believe me? Jun Xie looked at him with tilted eyes. If you do not believe me, then so be it. I have no reason to make you believe me. Ha ha ha. However, drinking wine. Ha ha ha. Fellow brother, do you know what it means to drink wine? Do you know what it takes for one to be considered to be drinking wine? Ha ha ha. The middle-aged man frowned and was speechless. In his mind, he had started regretting coming over. This kid was too abnormal. He had come over with such good intentions, and yet this kid did not show any appreciation at all. Not to mention, he was even so disrespectful. Even if he was a talent, he was still just a prideful and unrestrained scholar. It would be difficult for him to become a great renowned talent. Jun Xie gave out a hang and said in a low voice, "The true act of drinking wine is to drink in one's emotions, or even one's thoughts. Pouring wine into one's belly alone cannot be considered the act of drinking wine. That is simply the act of wasting good wine. Wine. Oh, dear wine. To think that not only were there no good wine in this world, there is also none who understands wine. What more the act of drinking wine? There is no such thing as wine tasting. No such thing as appreciation for wine. The virtuous sages of old were all solitary figures. Only drinkers leave their names behind. How pitiful. Within this vast world, not a single drinker can be found. What a world-encompassing sorrow. How uncalled for." Having drank his cup of sorrows, Jun Xie stood up. Raising his head, he gave a lengthy laugh. A great distance of 1,000,000 li. An ocean of humanity numbering over hundreds of millions. Yet, not a single one can keep me company as I drink. And not a single wine is worthy of making me joyful as I drink. This world is simply too sorrowful. Ahaha. When drinking wine with a bosom friend, 1,000 cups are too little. When words exchanged are disagreeable, even a little is too much. When the wine is not good, the people become wearier. Where is the meaning in such a way of drinking? I will take my leave. This kind of inferior wine is actually a limited edition wine. When I point out its inferiority, someone actually objects. What the heck? Jun Xie's heart was filled with fury. He felt as though he was playing the lute to the cow. This world seemed to consist of nothing but country bumpkins. How can such a kind of person be worthy of accompanying me, the evil monarch, as I drink? A silver ingot fell onto the table with a "pa" sound. Jun Xie then walked out the door with a prideful laughter. His body penetrated the heavy fog-filled rain, disappearing in an instant. Even with his level of character, the middle-aged man found himself somewhat angered. This youngster was so young, and yet he was so conceited. No matter what, he was still someone with a lofty identity. To think that the wine that he liked the most and had considered as the best was actually worth less than thrash to the youngster. Wasn't that simply implying that he? However, his heart was a little envious of Jun Xie's carefree and willful nature. That personality of conceit and unrestrained arrogance. When will I be able to live such a life? This city is just like a huge cage. Even though he seemed unrestrained and arrogant, this straightforwardness may not be his true character. The virtuous sages of old were all solitary figures. Only drinkers leave their names behind. What a good sentence. The middle-aged man contemplated silently, raising his cup to drink. Could it be a psychological effect? Or was there some other reason? This wine, which he had always felt was insufficient for him, had suddenly felt harder to stomach. It is said that the ancients created poems for every 7 paces they take. I always thought they were just flattering the ancients. It seemed that a poem for every 7 paces is indeed nothing excessive, especially the last 2 sentences. It is truly something. He gently murmured to himself. When drinking wine with a bosom friend, 1,000 cups are too little. When words exchanged are disagreeable, even a little is too much. Not bad. Not bad at all. This scholar really does have some skill. Having said that, the middle-aged man suddenly stared blankly as he thought of something. Then he laughed. This be asterisk starred. He actually meant to say that I am not his bosom friend and that the words we exchanged were disagreeable. Haha, he actually cursed at me before leaving. Using such an indirect method to curse me, he is a truly learned scholar. However, in this entire Qinghan kingdom, the only other person who dares to openly curse me like this is but my royal brother. This brat had truly made me feel refreshed. In his life, Jun Xie has had many kinds of label placed on him: a mad assassin, a bloodthirsty devil, and other incalculable names. However, this learned scholar was not one of them. Even Jun Xie could not have imagined that his reliving of old memories and his few successive verses had caused him to be labeled as a learned scholar. Not to mention, he was believed to be indirectly cursing at others while doing so. If he were to know about this, he would be filled with a sense of ridiculousness. If Jun Xie had wanted to curse at someone, then he would undoubtedly point at the person's nose when doing so. What do you mean indirect cursing? For Jun Xie, even the act of cursing someone face to face would not suffice. The middle-aged man laughed for a good while. Suddenly, he felt something amiss. Turning around, he saw a short, thin, withered-looking old man gazing with dim eyes at the direction that Jun Xie had taken. He stood motionless, his face expressing regret. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 35. Meeting in the Rain. Old song. What is wrong with you? Did that brat's words provoke you to the point of becoming muddle-headed? The middle-aged man gracefully lifted the wine jug, pouring another cup for himself. He is just a young, unrestrained scholar saying nonsensical stuff. You are someone with a high degree of tolerance. There is no need for you to be so petty about it. He may not recognize how good your wine is, but I do. Your Highness may not know this, but this fine wine is my proudest achievement, the accumulation of my entire life. As for the others, they are nothing more than things of the past. When I heard that little brat treat my wine with contempt, all I did was laugh and ignore him. Old Song stared at the direction Jun Xie left with a blank, distracted look. What a pity that when I came out after hearing his last sentence, he had already left. To miss out on meeting a fellow friend who understands the realm of wine. What a pity. A fellow friend who understands wine? Pity? The middle-aged man who was addressed as Your Highness was startled. Indeed, it is a true pity. Old Song nodded without hesitation. To be able to utter those words, this youngster had proven himself as someone who understands wine. He then murmured. The true act of drinking wine is to drink in one's emotions, or even one's thoughts. Pouring wine into one's belly alone cannot be considered the act of drinking wine. That is simply the act of wasting good wine. One who understands the act of drinking wine, the meaning of wine tasting, the appreciation of wine, To miss out on meeting such a fellow friend who understands wine is truly the biggest regret in one's life. Glancing around, the bamboo rain hat that Jun Xie had left hanging had unknowingly disappeared. Old Song's eyes flickered. The pupils of eyes suddenly flashed with a pale blue color. Unfortunately, the one addressed as Your Highness was looking at him from behind and did not notice this. Yellow for earth rank. Blue for sky rank. This old Song, who seemed extremely untidy and only knows how to brew wine, was secretly a Sky Xian ranked expert. Standing below only the supreme god Xian, Sky Xian experts could be considered the pinnacle of existences within the Xian continent. Such a distinguished individual was actually staying in such a small and remote wine shop. It was unfortunate. If Jun Xie had not left, he would have been able to discover this extraordinary aspect of Old Song with this unique spiritual sense. He would certainly have caught onto Old Song's addictive love of good wine. Unfortunately, Jun Xie had long since left. Not even his shadow can be found. After leaving the wine shop, Jun Xie walked slowly. Both his heart and mind gradually became clear. He emerged out of the bizarre state that he was in. That state could be considered the representation of the evil monarch, Jun Xie. That state symbolized the evil monarch's true emotion from the past, which held only disdain towards the world. Showing no fear towards offending other. He would say whatever he wished to say, do whatever he wished to do, even if it meant choosing a different path from tens of thousands of people, even if his actions were universally condemned by the world. The original evil monarch would proudly continue forward, standing alone against the world. Acting based on his own whim, uncaring of scruples, uncaring of others' feelings. If the world chooses to praise me and lift my reputation to the skies, I would simply accept it while retaining a clear conscience. If the world chooses to curse me, I would also accept it all the same. This heretical personality of his was what brought upon the name Evil Monarch. But after having vented some of his frustrations, Jun Xie, who had collected himself, would naturally choose to stop the sentiment he felt as Evil Monarch. Calming himself down, he stared at the heavy rain and decided that there was nowhere good to go in this heavy rain. Since there was nowhere good to go, he turned and headed towards his own home. As he was about to turn into the corner of a street, Jun Xie was suddenly startled and slowed down his pace. A low muffled voice came from beyond the corner. If not for the fact that Jun Xie's ears were more keen compared to the average person, he would never have heard it in the middle of such a heavy rain. The voice said, "We finally succeeded. If it was not for this heavy rain, we would never have this chance to even touch this Tang family's item. This was a heavenly blessing." Tang family? Jun Xie felt shocked as he immediately thought of Tang Yuan's family. Pondering about this, he moved his body, using the heavy rain as a cover, and hid himself behind a wall with a flash. The wall was an earthen wall, not high by usual standards and not capable of hiding an entire person. However, it provided an excellent cover within this heavy rain, which was filled with fog. Not to mention, the people in front were not even aware of his existence. He slowly removed the bamboo rain hat and was immediately soaked from head to toe in water. This was because the sound produced from rain hitting the bamboo rain hat differed from the sound produced from rain hitting the earthen wall. Jun Xie could not help but be careful. Of course, there was still a fine difference in sound produced from rain hitting the body compared to hitting the earthen wall. However, when compared to the bamboo hat, this difference was far smaller. Amidst the gasping sounds of whoo, roughly 6 people walked forward, seemingly requiring great effort to even walk. None of them seemed to think that it was possible for someone to be around the main street in this heavy rain. One of them, who was holding on to a parcel, turned around and said, This matter had been planned for so long, but was never successfully accomplished. For us to finally succeed this time around, the master will definitely be overjoyed once he finds out. Another man replied while gasping. It is true that we succeeded, but at no small cost. How unexpected! Even though 4 out of 6 of the Tang family's elites are not around, they still managed to detect our stealthy movements. If it was not for that mysterious person who lured away the 2 remaining experts of the Tang family, and also our 14 brothers who sacrificed their lives to guard our rear, I fear, sigh. Having said that, he started coughing. However, this item is of great importance. We have no room for error regarding this matter. We had better return quickly and hand this item over to the master. We must finish up this matter as soon as possible. Only then can we let our guard down a bit. Sigh. The next few days would certainly be crappy. Do not delay anymore. Be careful of any possible interruptions and move. Indeed. Indeed. However, Brother Lang, in order for us to infiltrate the Tang family earlier, your brother-in-law had helped us. What would happen if the Tang family found out about it? I fear that your brother-in-law would be unable to escape. Fear your ass. By the time they find out about it, we brothers would have collected our rewards and leave this place for another. The world is not a small place. I really do not believe that this Tang family have the ability to find us. As for my brother-in-law, I believe he is long gone by now. Like hell he would wait for the Tang family to catch him. That guy is a slippery one. If you have time to worry about him, you might as well worry more about yourself. Very true. The 6 people moved forward in a hurry, each step bringing them closer towards Jun Xie. Watching from the side, Jun Xie observed that among the 6 people, 4 of them had suffered serious injuries while the injuries suffered by the other 2 was not light either. As they moved, blood continuously flowed out from them. 2 of them were coughing non-stop, each cough resulting in the ground being splattered with the color of crimson. However, the crimson color was immediately washed away by the rainwater. What exactly did they stole from the Tang family? Was it really so important? They sent in 20 men, but was forced to leave behind 14, allowing only 6 to escape. As for these 6 people, 4 of them suffered such grievous injuries and yet they actually feel satisfied and proud. If the Tang family obtained something good, would Tang Yuan not show it off first? Suddenly, the one who seemed to have suffered the most grievous of injuries stopped moving. He coughed out before snapping. Who is it? Reveal yourself. With a thunderous gaze, he shifted his attention towards Jun Xie's direction. His body suddenly emitted a brilliant silver glow as he channeled all the Xian qi in his body, fully ready to strike at any moment. The person who was suffering the most grievous injuries was actually a silver-leveled Xian qi expert. Furthermore, he also managed to detect Jun Xie's presence. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 36. Expert. Silver is the beginning. Gold is growth. The meaning embedded in this phrase was that only those who had managed to break through from the 9th level Xian Qi to the silver level could be considered to have stepped onto the path of the experts. The beginning stage no less. In the Xian continent, Xian Qi cultivation could be considered a widespread practice. Even the normal soldiers of the military would have cultivated themselves in Xian Qi. However, majority of the people were unable to breach the bottleneck of the 9th level, forever unable to move forward. This was also the reason why none of the 300 house guards of the Jun family dared to refute Jun Xie when he was criticizing them. More than 80% of the 300 men possessed Xian Qi cultivation of the 8th level, some of which were at the peak of the 8th level. However, not a single one of them could attain the next step, the 9th level Xian Qi. It was a difference of merely one level, and yet the distance towards that level was as far as the horizon. A similar bottleneck existed between the 9th level and the silver level. The members of these two factions were separated by a huge chasm in the skies. 9 and below are but ants. This sentence alone was enough to explain everything. It was from the silver level onwards that a huge difference would emerge in their cultivation of Xian Qi. The other 5 men also stopped in their tracks. 6 sharp gazes pierced through the rain. The bodies of the other 5 men radiated with a dense black glow. These 5 men were actually peak 9th leveled Xian Qi experts. As for the man in the lead, he channeled his whole body's Xian Qi, resulting in a brilliant silver glow. This man was obviously a peak silver leveled Xian Qi expert, one who was about to step into the realm of the gold level. It was also he who had discovered Jun Xie's presence. It was no wonder that they would be able to steal something from the Tang family's residence. They selected a time when Tang family's strength was at its weakest, sending in 20 of such capable experts. It was obvious they had already pinpointed the location of the item beforehand, prepared a well-laid plan devoid of emotion, and they also had the help of an insider. If they still could not pull off this heist under such conditions, then the strength that the Tang family possessed would be absolutely terrifying. However, among the 20 experts sent in, only these 6 were able to escape. Assuming that the 14 men who had to leave behind were all at the 9th level Xian Qi cultivation, then the strength of the Tang family was nothing to scoff at. At this moment, the rain was still pouring down frantically. The heavy rain and dense fog had caused both sides to be unable to observe clearly the situation of the other side. Not to mention, they were now currently in the late afternoon of autumn. Jun Xie felt somewhat frustrated at his current level of strength. It was still too small. Even though he had tried to conceal his presence, he was unable to accomplish the same level of concealment, which he was able to in his past life, a perfectly undetectable camouflage. It seemed that he would have to face an uphill battle today. However, with his current level of strength, could he defeat these 6 experts? He had absolutely no confidence in this matter. Even if his opponent were only one of them, he still would not be able to beat them at his current level of strength. It was unfortunate that he had already borne witness to their deeds. Running away was not an option. At this point in time, they would want nothing more than to kill him to shut his mouth as insurance. In order to preserve his life, he will need to come up with some other methods. As the dignified king of assassins, he had now found himself caught in such an unreasonable situation. What irony! While he was reflecting upon his depressing situation, Jun Xie suddenly realized something, a very important something. This realization caused him, who was depressed to the utmost, to make a 180-degree turn. This realization had made him unbelievably happy, so much so that he might end up laughing in joy. Although his 6 opponents were all experts with a base strength far superior to his own, Jun Xie had at this moment found an assured method of victory. Jun Xie's body was veiled amidst the rain and fog, causing the 6 men to feel uncertain as to how many men they were facing. They only know that there was someone there, but not how many, and definitely not the appearance of Jun Xie. Thus, all of them remained careful, unwilling to make any reckless movements. After all, they had just emerged from a bloody battle, having lost a great deal of battle potential, and most of them were suffering from severe injuries. Any carelessness on their part could bring about a fatal disaster. But the same could not be said for Jun Xie. For him, there was currently no difference between now and day. It may be more accurate to say that it was even clearer than day for him. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune was an extremely mysterious source of power, one that was shrouded in mystery. However, Jun Xie had only practiced it for around 1 month. His cultivation level shallow and was naturally unable to understand its intricacies. As such, he was unable to perceive well in the darkness. But each of the 6 men before him channeled all the Xian Qi energies of their bodies to the limit, causing their bodies to radiate brightly in the black foggy rain with silver and black glow, as though they were fearful that their opponent was unable to see them. In Jun Xie's eyes, they had transformed into 6 target dummies, 6 beautifully crafted and clear-to-see target dummies. This feeling, like a ship that has lost its way in the midst of the boundless ocean, which suddenly found a lighthouse before it. This was exactly how Jun Xie felt at this moment in time. With such a degree of brilliance, even an unprogrammed missile will not miss its mark. Jun Xie had discovered the biggest weakness of this world's Xian Qi. It was simply too eye-catching. There was absolutely no chance of utilizing sneak attacks. In order to engage in battle, one must first channel the Xian Qi within their bodies. But once the Xian Qi have been gathered, the body would end up emitting a radiant glow. When faced against a high-grade assassin such as Jun Xie, these 6 men were no different from 6 barren *ked pigs. 6 pigs who were waiting to be butchered with a dignified expression. It was no wonder that nobody suspected anything back then when Jun Xie had cheated during the game of dice. As long as one had practiced up to the 5th level Xian Qi, it would be possible to cheat as well. However, doing so would cause their bodies to emit a radiant glow. Unless the cheater was a supreme god expert. But was there a need for a supreme god expert to stoop so low as to cheat in gambling? The one who created this Xian Qi cultivation method was simply a genius. How did that person knew that I would end up being transmigrated here and face this kind of situation? This method was simply made for my sake, so that I can have an easy and convenient time in killing people. This method is simply the most well-tailored cultivation method for my enemies. In Jun Xie's opinion, if these 6 men were pigs, then Xian Qi at this moment was pig's feed. Only after having eaten a good amount of pig's feed would pigs be able to grow to the desirable plump and fat shape. Not only that, they would even take the initiative to rush out before the butcher, showing off its plump and fat body shape, as though it was proudly saying, "You see? See how fat I am? Come. It is time to butcher me. I am ready whenever you are." And Jun Xie's current role was none other than this butcher. Naturally, killing pigs also require some amount of skill. That was because the pigs before him were not that easy to kill. A little lapse in attention could cause him to suffer a strike from them. As of now, the body state of the butcher was still too weak, unable to endure even a single strike from them. Moving his long sleeves, he tilted, his muscles flexing in coordination with his movements. 18 pieces of coin-shaped darts which were hidden upon his rib area fell silently onto Jun Xie's palms. Jun Xie then remained motionless, his eyes emitting a bloodthirsty flash. Fully channeling the energy flow of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, he poured the energies from his meridians into the coin-shaped darts. In the autumn afternoon filled with rain, this moment in time where the world began to darken, the king of assassins from another world bared his fangs for the first time. This was the first time since arriving in this strange world that he would reveal his artistic killing techniques. Pang! Pang! The sound of footsteps slowly sounded out as the 6 men moved through the rain. They gradually dispersed themselves, putting some distance between one another as they cautiously moved to flank Jun Xie's position. All of them could feel that this person before them was still there, and had not moved at all. This person must not be allowed to live. Regardless of who this person may be, they must eradicate him. That was the thought process running through all 6 of them. Amidst the heavy rain and fog, the person before them seemingly made his move. After which they all saw 6 brilliant yellow lights emerging from the rain. These 6 lights flew like lightning, each aimed at the throats of each of the 6 men. The unique energies that Jun Xie had poured into the coin-shaped darts caused them to radiate an eye-catching brilliance, bright to the extreme. At the very moment that the yellow lights blazed out, all 6 of them felt a chill running down their spines. All 6 of them simultaneously felt their bodies stiffen, their minds startled to the zenith. One of them stared with bulging eyes and muttered in a near-crying voice. Earth Xian. What kind of person can emit such a brilliant yellow light? Such speed. Such vigor. With the exception of an Earth Xian ranked expert, no other stages can emit this type of Xian qi and light. Above the silver level was the gold level. Above the gold level was the jade level. And only above the jade level was there the Earth Xian rank. Such a difference in power cannot be considered a minuscule error in calculation. How were they supposed to fight this battle? They wanted to silence this person. It seemed that they were about to be silenced by him. Even if the enemy was a gold-level expert and the 6 of them were at optimal conditions, they may not be able to compete with him. But now that all of them had suffered such grievous injuries, they actually bumped into an Earth Xian ranked expert. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 37. Murder and Plunder. The heavens want me to die. A bitter feeling beset all 6 of them. Despair. All they could see was the 6 brilliant yellow lights, completely ignoring the person before them. They could no longer notice that this person simply does not possess the threatening aura of an Earth Xian ranked expert. The overwhelming feelings of despair caused a momentary lapse of judgment on the part of these 6 men. However, it was also this one small moment which sealed their fate. The reason why Jun Xie shot out those coin-shaped darts filled with the unique energies of radiance was precisely because he had predicted the occurrence of this one moment. For a good assassin, one must have an insight towards the mind of their opponent. According to Jun Xie's calculations, should these 6 men encounter an expert they could not defeat, they would be caught in a quagmire. This moment when they were caught in a quagmire was the one moment that Jun Xie was waiting for. When a seriously injured silver-leveled Xian Qi expert suddenly bumped into a peak Earth Xian ranked expert, his heart would experience an unimaginable amount of fear and apprehension. This feeling was akin to simply waiting for an inevitable death. Furthermore, these men were in the midst of being hunted. It was only natural that this feeling of despair would rise up even faster than normal. This one small moment was what Jun Xie wanted. If he had directly attacked without any tricks, then at least 3 of these 6 men would be able to dodge Jun Xie's coin-shaped dart. Separating the strength in between 6 darts would inevitably cause the force behind it to fall, being far inferior to only one well-aimed dart. Even if only one of them remained alive, Jun Xie would be in for a world of trouble. They may all be injured, but any one of them was not someone that Jun Xie could handle with his current state. The reason why none of Little Li's flying daggers was issued in vain was because only one was issued each time. Jun Xie's focus was naturally placed on the silver-leveled Xian Qi expert. Even though he was seriously injured, he was the one who gave him the highest amount of pressure. It was also him who was keen enough to notice Jun Xie's presence. After the 6 dazzling coin-shaped darts appeared, 12 dark gray lights flew out. However, the 6 pieces of darts had already attracted their undivided attention. In addition, the heavy downpour also became a source of concealment for the dark gray lights. All 6 of them were shaken to the core and had all panicked as they dodged the 6 incoming darts. None of them dared to block the darts with their weapons, fearing the internal damage that might result from strength of an Earth Xian ranked expert. In truth, were those projectile weapons really sent out by an Earth Xian ranked expert? None of them would even have the opportunity to glimpse the yellow radiance before being killed off. Not even the strongest among them, the silver level expert, could be exempted. Unfortunately, in their state of shock, none of them noticed this. Despite moving quickly to avoid those darts, 2 of them still cried out miserably. They were unable to avoid in time, and the coin-shaped dart pierced the area above the collarbone. Their blood sprayed out as they fell to the ground. Those who had fallen to the ground even believed themselves to be already dead. Having accepted a thunderous strike from an Earth Xian expert, what can they who were only at the 9th level do except close their eyes and wait obediently for their deaths? Not to mention, those darts had already pierced their throats. They did not notice that the darts had only penetrated the area above their collarbone without cutting off their windpipes. 4 miserable screams echoed out at the same time, following the appearance of the second wave of projectiles. 12 flying daggers struck either their throats or their foreheads. Those 4 men who were standing all had their bodies struck by at least 2 daggers each, every one of them piercing the most vital of parts. Their faces expressed a look of disbelief as they tightly pressed onto the hilt of the dagger on their throats. Their bodies remained upright as they fell face first onto the rainwater on the ground. As for the silver level expert, which received Jun Xie's utmost care, his situation was far more miserable in comparison, as he was already grievously injured to begin with. His head and body were pierced with up to 4 daggers. All of them penetrated so deep into him that not even the handle could be seen. Even upon their moment of death, they were unable to understand. Didn't they already avoid that fatal strike? Why did they suddenly suffer from another mortal wound from these flying daggers? As an Earth Xian ranked expert, facing off against them whose existence were akin to ants before him, once his first strike failed, then he should have considered his status and stopped attacking. Why did he attack again? Why? He actually utilized sneak attacks against someone who were 2 levels below him in cultivation. Moreover, after the first time failed, he actually sent in a second one. Could it be that the current Earth Xian experts were all shameless pricks without a care for their bearings? In this world, Earth Xian experts were all individuals who placed utmost importance on their reputations. Since when did they become so shameless? The Earth Xian expert, Jun Xie, showed no hesitation as he moved in with lightning speed, smoothly pulling out the flying dagger from the forehead of a corpse. He then changed his pace from 2 paces to 1. He rushed towards the 2 men who had fallen prior and viciously stabbed one of them directly in his heart. Although these 2 men had suffered no small amount of injury, it was not enough to be instantly fatal. As of now, they were at a loss due to fear. However, they still possessed a certain level of combat capabilities. An enemy who can still pose a threat must not be allowed to live, even if they were on the verge of death. What happened to him in his previous life was the greatest lesson for Jun Xie. The only enemies who cannot threaten him are dead enemies. Killing intent surged within Jun Xie's mind, his face painted with coldness. The flying dagger was gripped tight by Jun Xie, the tip of his feet positioned outwards. At the same time that the dagger had stabbed into that man, he started moving. The hand used to stab earlier loosened as he turned towards the other person. Like a cyclone, he launched his other hand downwards, forming a cleaver form, hacking into the man's throat. This series of actions was performed in quick succession, enough to cause the average person to miss out on it. The very moment that the yellow coin-shaped darts flew out, Jun Xie's fleeting figure had already moved outwards. When the 4 men cried out miserably, Jun Xie was already pulling out one of the flying daggers sticking out from their heads. Even before their 4 dead bodies fell flat onto the ground, the flying dagger had already found its way into the heart of the first survivor. At the same moment, his other hand had also cleaved the throat of the second and last survivor. The man who was pierced in the heart by the dagger did not even have the luxury of making a single noise as he died on the spot. Finally, the crack sound from the last target whose throat was fractured resounded out at the same time that the sound of 4 bodies hitting the surface water was heard. After completing the actions above, Jun Xie climbed up as he gasped for breath. With his current state, completing those movements earlier was indeed quite the difficult matter. The original Jun Moy had simply caused successive problems for this body. If not for the shedding process and the constant exercise for the past month, there was no way he could have managed the earlier series of actions. Even so, the time limit for him was simply too short and the action was akin to borrowing an overdraft from the bank. Once he relaxed his spiritual force, he was bombarded by the backlash from the violent movements made earlier. He felt pain assailing him from every part of the body. His muscles and bones felt as though it was about to break apart, a heart-splitting and lung-jerking pain. The last survivor emitted a "whoa" sound as he spurted out an arrow of blood, spraying directly at Jun Xie's face. As their eyes locked, he stared with resentment at Jun Xie, hissing, You are not Earth." It was only at his moment of death did he came to realize that this person before him was definitely not an Earth Xian expert. "You bunch of pig heads." Jun Xie sighed, feeling sorry for him. "If I am really an Earth Xian expert, would I need to resort to sneak attacks against you bunch of trash?" The man's throat released a series of strange sounds as his eyes suddenly glinted with fury. An expression of resentment and rage formed on his face. His body arched forward. His body, which was at the end of its life, suddenly found the strength to lift a trembling hand, pointing at Jun Xie. He seemed as though he wanted to say something but nothing came out. He simply stared at Jun Xie. Not long after, he fell back onto the ground with a paw. After twitching for a bit, he finally breathed his last. His eyes remained wide open onto death. Originally, he still had some breath left. Even though it was only a matter of time before dying, but he could at least endured for a while longer. Who could have known that Jun Xie's words had instead provoked him to death? Moving around, Jun Xie retrieved the coin-shaped darts and flying daggers. At the same time, he also conducted a search on their bodies. Jun Xie's actions were natural, his heart undisturbed as though he was merely checking his own pockets, completely disregarding the fact that those 6 men were dead. His training as an assassin in his previous life had embedded within him a calmness, which cannot be broken even if Mount Tai were to collapse before him. Besides, Jun Xie had witnessed far more situations that were far bloodier than this. He finally found a small parcel in the hands of the silver-leveled expert. After weighing it for a bit, Jun Xie then reached out for the bamboo rain hat, which was on the ground. Placing it beneath his rib area, he strode off, turning into the corner. Behind him, the heavy rain continued, creating a huge curtain, cutting off Jun Xie from this bloody scene as though they were of 2 different worlds. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 38. Purely Coincidental. On the street, the heavy rain continued pouring down, dispersing the crimson lines on the ground, leaving only 6 corpses lying quietly. One of the corpses had its eyes remained wide open, staring furiously towards the skies, his face filled with resentment. After taking a few detours, Jun Xie finally made his way back to the Jun residence. Even as Jun Xie strolled ahead, the rain continued falling without abandon. The blood on Jun Xie's face had already been washed away by the rain. After being washed by rainwater, the only thing one would see was a few brownish stains. No one would have guessed that those stains were the blood of 6 warriors. Besides, there was no way that Jun Xie could have fought against those men with his current level of strength. After all, these were the blood of a silver-leveled expert and 5 ninth-leveled Xian Qi experts. It was at this moment when Jun Xie had stepped into the Jun residence that a tall figure pierced through the heavy rain. Just like a rocket streaking through the skies, this figure arrived at the corner where the 6 corpses could be seen lying on the ground. Becoming surprised, the person rushed towards them, using a hand to pat the 6 men, searching their bodies but was unable to find anything. Suddenly straightening his body, the person's face became extremely gloomy. This man wore a peculiar-looking mask on his face, making it hard to ascertain his facial features. However, every move of his was done with calmness and ease. With a golden glow, he flew up to a big tree located 5 zhangs 15 meters away from them. Standing on the tree, he looked around. His way of conduct seemed as though he was not wasting any energy or effort in his actions. A golden glow could be seen. This person was a gold-leveled expert. With a lightning-like gaze, he carefully inspected the surroundings. Suddenly, he flew down from the tree and moved towards the 6 corpses. He circled the 6 bodies as he analyzed it, after which he moved towards one of the directions where their blood was flowing. However, his movement speed was surprisingly superior compared to that of the usual experts, his speed exceeding what the experts could achieve when running. That direction was none other than the direction that Jun Xie had used when he left this place. This person was truly detailed. Amidst the heavy flow of rainwater, he actually managed to pinpoint the right direction. The man followed the traces and moved forward. After moving for a while, he suddenly stopped and let out a light-sounded curse. The detours that Jun Xie had taken had actually led him in a circle. After following the traces left by Jun Xie, the mysterious gold-leveled expert found himself back at the same starting spot. Who was it? Who could it be? Such a deep level of thought process. The man whispered to himself. He raised his head to the skies, his mind lost in thoughts. Who was it who disrupted my plan? Who was it that could seize this opportunity with such precision? Who could have seen through my plans? Who was it that could read my mind? The execution of this plan was something done at the spur of the moment. Not even he himself predicted that this would happen. In addition, there was the sudden heavy rain. Considering these factors, the problem could not possibly have originated from his end. But then, where did it come from? Could it be? The mysterious man painstakingly analyzed, poring through every variable, going so far as to suspect everyone around him in his analysis. This man's thoughts have always been deep and profound. Every factor must be within the palm of his hands before a decision was made. His obsession towards detail could be said to have reached the extreme. Take what happened today, for example. Even if he was beaten to his death, he would never believe that there would be such a kind of coincidence. As such, his mind was fixed from the very beginning. The incident today must have been the work of someone or some organization. Perhaps his own family was trying to screw him over, or perhaps someone with an enmity towards his family. His thoughts sprouted out with this point of view as its base. It was only natural that all the possibilities in his mind were wrong, so much so that it could be said to be of hundreds of thousands of li in difference. This man could never have considered that what happened today was simply a coincidence. A very interesting coincidence. If the silver-leveled expert had not detected Jun Xie's presence, then Jun Xie would never have chosen to incur the wrath of others while his strength had yet to bloom. If the one the silver-leveled expert had detected was not Jun Xie but a commoner, then he would have been able to safely deliver the item back to the designated place. In fact, if this person had arrived just a few moments earlier, there was no way Jun Xie could have beaten the man with his current level of strength. Everything that had happened was all a coincidence. Coincidences were the inevitable path for all developments. The events of the world could never follow the will of men. Although Jun Xie taking away the item that the man wanted was due to a coincidence, Jun Xie himself does not know what the item was, or what it can be used for. Jun Xie deciding to go out for a walk was a coincidence in itself. When he realized that the Mid-Autumn festival of his past life was approaching, he felt himself becoming nostalgic and homesick. In this world, there was no one he could have a good chat with. There was also no place like the bars in his past life. It would also be inappropriate for him to become depressed at home. Not to mention Jun Xie was not one to let others see himself being submerged in such weak emotions. Thus, he went out, planning to drink away his sorrows. Unexpectedly, that middle-aged man's words caused him to lose the desire to continue, the wine becoming less appealing and harder to stomach. After saying a few contemptuous words, he left the wine shop. Still feeling depressed, Jun Xie wandered about in the streets, as though this act of threading through the heavy rain could bring some level of comfort for him. It was then which the coincidence occurred. After a series of coincidences, Jun Xie ended up bumping into those men who had stolen the item from the Tang family. Those few men who barely escaped, coincidentally also stopped for a while, allowing Jun Xie to listen in on their conversations. With his current level of strength, Jun Xie had intended to simply forget about this incident. After all, the current Jun Xie had no particular feelings for the Tang family. If the Tang family lost something, then so be it. It had nothing to do with him, regardless of what it might be. Who could have guessed that those men would have such dog-like noses to be able to sniff out Jun Xie's presence? This left Jun Xie with no other option. Considering the strength of these men, running away was not an option. With no other options at hand, Jun Xie resorted to utilizing projectiles. Depending on the help granted by the heavens, in addition to utilizing his trick and had these men killed in one swift moment. Since those men were dead, there was no reason for Jun Xie not to help himself to it and retrieve the item from them. As such, the invaluable item that the mysterious person eagerly desired fell into the hands of Jun Xie through a series of seemingly limitless coincidences. None of these matters seemed to be eye-catching at all. And yet, when they came together, these series of coincidences could cause anyone to jump in shock. Gaining great benefits without knowing what was going on, ruining other people's meticulous plans as he strolled around aimlessly. For so many coincidences to have occurred, this was simply a form of divine intervention. Even the heavens decided to throw in a heavy rain to add to the fun. This could only be labeled as heaven's will, or perhaps the director of this series of coincidences was heavens itself. The mysterious man remained there and was just about to leave when he heard a roaring noise. The Tang family's house guards were charging over. Sighing, his body radiated a golden glow and he made his move. 6 pa sounds were heard, as the heads of the 6 corpses below exploded. Their original visage no longer recognizable. Brushing his sleeves, the man jumped into the rain and disappeared. When the Tang family's men came over, all they saw was 6 corpses with damaged heads. As for the item that they needed to recover, it was nowhere to be found. Jun Xie remained ignorant to the fact that he had inadvertently disrupted the plan of Jun family's biggest enemy. He even retrieved the precious item that the mysterious man desired. However, Jun Xie only felt aggrieved. I had originally only wanted to enjoy the rainy atmosphere, reflect on the memories of my old world, immerse myself in this nostalgic emotion of solitary loneliness. Instead, I had to bump into a bunch of rotten stars, destroying my perfect atmosphere and feelings. Sigh. How depressing. Not a single thing went right. First, I went to drink wine but bumped into a man who cannot differentiate between good and bad wine, claiming that an inferior wine is a masterpiece. How pitifully laughable. After that, I left to enjoy the rainy atmosphere, but instead bumped into a bunch of people trying to kill me. What a bad luck. Jun Xie sighed as he raised his head to the skies. Patting the small parcel on his bosom, he stepped into the Jun residence. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 39. Guan Qinghan. The boundless heavy rain finally reduced in intensity. However, the rain continued on. Jun Xie walked leisurely, causing those who saw him through either the door or the windows to wonder, "Oh, God! What kind of madness is the young master up to now?" Well, compared to his previous sort of crazy trouble, this one seemed more reasonable, although it does seem peculiar. What is he doing outside when it is raining like cats and dogs? As he was passing by the garden area, he suddenly heard the melody of a flute slowly emanating outwards. Within the melody of the flute was an unforgettable sorrow. Listening to the sound of the flute, one could imagine the sorrow and hidden feelings of resentment filling the person playing the flute. But when Jun Xie heard the sound, he felt that it coincided with his current state of emotions. Unable to help himself, he went towards the source of the tune. In a pavilion situated in the middle of the garden, a white-robed woman sat on a stone bench, her back facing Jun Xie. Her hair rolled up high like dark clouds, her waist slender. Looking at her from behind, one would have believed that she was a cold but refined woman. However, to be accompanied by the mournful melody of the cold flute in this desolate autumn, it would appear that this woman was lonely and dismal. Jun Xie stood quietly in the rain. He closed his eyes slightly, listening to the sorrowful tune of the flute. His mind was in a trance, as though he was listening to his favorite song from his past life. The song, Vain Eyebrows, from Red Dream Mansion. That same graceful sorrow, that same tearful resentment. Jun Xie's mind felt itself going drunk. In this heavy autumn rain, for whom was this pain and sorrow? At this moment, Jun Xie suddenly felt that the woman before him was suffering the same solitary loneliness as him. However, when compared to himself, her state was one that was far more helpless. Amidst the sorrowful resentment of the flute's melody, even the wind became suffocating. The flute's melody gradually became weaker, just like a thread of silk swaying in the air, swaying until there was nothing. The white-robed woman remained seated. She placed down the jade flute and faintly sighed. The sound of her sigh was dispersed by the sound of the rain, apparently showing how weak it was in comparison. Jun Xie's heart felt moved. He could not help but also let out a gentle sigh. Even though the sound was light, the woman became shocked. She immediately turned around, her gaze locking onto Jun Xie. Her face showed surprise. Then it became faintly disgusted and she looked at Jun Xie with contempt. "It is you. The flute melody is not bad. Very beautiful." Jun Xie smiled as he leisurely stepped into the pavilion. His rain-soaked body caused the floor of the pavilion to become wet. "Sister-in-law, how did you suddenly have this elegant interest?" The woman's looks were as a painting, her bearing graceful, but her face was filled with coldness. This woman whose body exuded an aura of coldness was Jun Moxie's sister-in-law and Jun Moyo's wife, Guan Qinghan. She was the only daughter of the famed Guan family, a well-known family in the Tianqiang kingdom. In truth, calling her Moyo's wife may be inappropriate. Their engagement was something that was set when they were both still toddlers. 3 years ago, Jun Moyo was 22 years old and Guan Qinghan was 18 years old. It was then which the two families began preparing the marriage for these two. However, a war suddenly erupted between them and Xinxi Kingdom. Jun Moyo and his little brother Jun Moxie were selected to join the expedition against Xinxi. Thus the two families decided to hold the marriage after Jun Moyo returned victoriously. Before Jun Moyo left for the army, they had already finished with the engagement ceremony and Guan Qinghan was already considered a member of the Jun family. Once Jun Moyo returned, their wedding would take place. As for the wedding date, that too was already set. However, none of them would have expected that Jun Moyo would never return, his body left to rest upon the battlefield. The two childhood sweethearts were now separated, faced with regrets forever. A precious talent, dying in an unclear and pitiful manner. When the bad news arrived, Guan Qinghan fainted on the spot. After that, she disregarded her family's advice and chose to enter the Jun family. She adopted the identity of a widow of the Jun family and helped in taking care of the elder in the Jun family. Grandpa Jun had asked her not to a number of times. After all, with her looks and background, there was no need to fear not being able to have a good marriage. He even proposed breaking off the engagement agreement to allow Guan Qinghan freedom from this situation. But Guan Qinghan persistently refused. Even after exhausting themselves, the elders of both families were unable to change her mind. All they could do was wait. Should the time ever came when she changed her mind, then they would send her back to the Guan family. Everyone in the Jun family, from the elderly Grandpa Jun Wui, all the way down to the servants, treated this young maiden with respect, not slighting her off in any way. However, there was one person who constantly made her unhappy, and that was her little brother-in-law, Jun Moxie. After his beautiful sister-in-law moved in, the prodigal debauchee, Jun Moxie became restless, his manner of speech flippant, his bearing frivolous, causing Guan Qinghan to feel extremely disgusted. Unable to tolerate him, she had once given him a harsh lesson. Even though she was the only daughter, she was quite proficient in martial arts. While not at the silver level Xian Qi, she was already at the peak 9th level Xian Qi. Dealing with someone like Jun Moxie was hardly a difficult task. However, the beatings did nothing to change this dissolute brat. Knowing that his beautiful sister-in-law would not inflict heavy injuries upon him, he would always peep at her secretly. Seeing such a shameless piece of tough shank, Guan Qinghan was unable to come up with any other method and chose instead to simply hide herself in her room most of the time. But today's rainy weather caused her heart to suddenly feel bitter and sorrowful, engulfing her with sadness. Thus, she decided to go to the pavilion to express her sorrow with the flute. Unexpectedly, this debauchee would brave the rain to come over. What an obsessive person! Do you not understand that my 9th level Xian Qi is far higher than yours? If I want to teach you a lesson, it would not take much effort. The reason I choose not to do so was simply because I did not want to disturb the peace of this residence, and also to not cause Gramps any heartaches. Did you think I was afraid of you? Oh, I just have nothing to do at the moment, and decided to play the flute for a bit. Could it be that third young master is an expert in this subject? Hearing Jun Xie's words, Guan Qinghan felt even more disgusted. What does this debauchee knows about the melody of a flute? Beautiful? Not bad? He is obviously trying to strike up a conversation with me. She stared at him coldly, wondering what kind of new face was he intending to show today. Barbs accompanied even her words. With Jun Xie's wisdom, how could he not understand the meaning in her words? However, this woman was someone he admired. Not to mention, he also understood just how unbearable the original Jun Moxie was. It was no wonder everyone would look down upon him. On the other hand, Guan Qinghan's affectionate devotion was something that Jun Xie found himself respecting. The melody of the flute projects the melody of the heart. The past is the past. It would be better for sister-in-law to allow your heart to let go. Let the past remain a thing of the past. Jun Xie hesitated slightly before replying. Guan Qinghan gave out a hang before turning her body to the side, ignoring him. Jun Xie began losing interest. If someone chose to ignore him, then he would simply ignore them even more. So what if she was a beautiful woman? Can beauty simply throw disdainful looks at others? He reluctantly said. I was presumptuous earlier, causing a disturbance for sister-in-law. I will go back now. Having said that, he smiled, turning around and walked away without hesitation. You are going to ignore me? That is fine. I will just go to sleep. Guan Qinghan became greatly surprised. She originally thought that he was planning to stalk her again, using false pretenses to get near her. Unexpectedly, he actually said some humane words. He even chose to leave on his own regardless of the rain. Observing Jun Xie's back as he left amidst the rain, Guan Qinghan opened her mouth, but then hesitated. Gazing at him again, she found that her little brother-in-law seemed really different today. This brat had always sported a nasty roguish smile, his eyes filled with dishonesty, darting everywhere. Whenever he saw her, he would drool in an unbearable manner. However, his earlier actions did not show any trace of frivolousness and was instead solemn, a very calm and profound demeanor. Furthermore, his eyes did not stare upon her at all. Observing his back as he left through the rain, she saw that he remained calm. Did he really change? Guan Qinghan inwardly gave a cold sneer, since his stalking actions did not yield any results. He decided to change tactics and wear the face of a gentleman to get close to me. Jun Moxie, did you expect me to fall for your trick? Even after you have changed your face 1,000 times, in my heart, you will forever be the dirty, shameless prodigal debauchee. That will never change. With such a heavy rain, you actually allowed yourself to be drenched in rainwater as you came over here only to say those few sentences? As if anyone would believe that. This could only prove that you have hidden motive for your actions. You are a gentleman. Would anyone believe that? Guan Qinghan's beautiful face instantly turned ice cold. However, this brat actually did not show any fear when he saw me glaring at him today. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 40. Xian Core. As Jun Xie was walking away, his heart felt sorry for his sister-in-law. Guan Qinghan was only 21 years old, the prime of her life. Not to mention, she was a heavenly stunning beauty, and yet she willingly entered the Jun family and became a widow. If this was his old world, then this kind of occurrence was simply unthinkable. However, here it was treated as a natural way of life. What a great tragedy. This is simply a waste of resources. If only I could. This thought suddenly emerged from Jun Xie's mind, giving him a shock. This does not feel like something that I would think of. I may sympathize with her, but how could I possibly end up with such a nasty kind of thought? This is simply not something that I would even consider. Unless you despicable Jun Moxie. Your soul had already left. And yet you still left this kind of residual effect. Jun Xie cursed inwardly. Jun Xie walked into his room. Without acknowledging the little Lolita's greeting, he sat down with a frown on his face. He reflected on his every action since the day he transmigrated over. Something did not feel right. In the past, he had also shown a frivolous side of him, but it was meant as a method of getting close to the target or as a cover. No matter what, it was only an act. Jun Xie's character had always been cold and arrogant, and was even ruthless. At times, he could even be described as cold-blooded. However, he came to realize that his personality had drastically changed since he transmigrated over. Admittedly, Jun Moxie's identity as a troublemaking debauchee was the best possible cover. However, he needed to have a good grasp on his own mind. I cannot allow the original character of this body, of Jun Moxie, to prevail. However, I also need this personality as a form of camouflage. Maintain my state of mind, complying with the outer layer, and yet deep down, I am still me. Evil Monarch Jun Xie. A burst of light shot forth from his eyes. Heartless before heaven and earth. Tens of thousands were but disposable fodder in his eyes. The ruthless evil monarch has stepped into this other world. Having resolved himself, he felt his body relaxing and was instantly reminded of other things. He removed the small parcel from his bosom. This parcel was obtained at the expense of the life of 20 experts. Even though he did not know who the mastermind was, Jun Xie was confident that no ordinary people would dare steal from the Tang family. In addition, no one would take such a huge risk unless this was an unbelievably high-grade treasure. Having such thoughts running through his mind, Jun Xie could not help but feel highly curious. He had originally thought of returning it to the Tang family, however he was now overwhelmed by the desire to open it up. Acting on his desires, this was the evil monarch's way. With a scoff, Jun Xie tore open the parcel. Within it was a square wooden box. A box that emitted a faint scent. Its top was covered with pale gold lines. This wooden box was surprisingly made of top-quality golden silk sandalwood. In addition, the material for this box of golden silk sandalwood was cut out from the tree as a whole. This box alone was worth a fortune. Opening the box, he felt a cold air wafting outwards. Inside the box was another snow-white box. Touching it, he felt a chilling cold. This was a high-grade cold jade. Judging by the color of the box, this cold jade was a mysteriously potent object. Jun Xie inhaled deeply. Just what exactly was it that was so important? They even used such a precious cold jade to keep it covered. Carefully opening the jade box, he found a round object within the box. The object was wrapped within a layer of colorful skin fur, which possessed a strange sheen. Jun Xie, who had no knowledge of what this was, did not feel bizarre at all. If a professional were to lay eyes on this, they would likely become shocked. This was the pelt of a 9th-leveled Xian beast. A 9th-leveled Xian beast was an existence akin to that of a supreme god expert. Golden silk sandalwood box, high-grade cold jade, and the pelt of a 9th-leveled Xian beast. Any of them could be considered a priceless treasure. These 3 priceless items were actually just part of the package. Jun Xie removed the object wrapped by the layer of pelt with his hand. It was a round object the size of a ping-pong ball. Looking at it, Jun Xie could not help but feel somewhat disappointed. The strange object was dark red and almost black in color. Its texture resembled that of a stone, yet was not a stone, resembled jade, and yet not jade. He gave it a pinch and found it to be slightly elastic. The impression given by this item was rather mediocre. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Jun Xie's mind and he blurted out. Xian core? Although Jun Xie does not know how a Xian core looked like, he knew that it was a precious item. Only a third-leveled Xian beast or above could produce a Xian core. As for this Xian core, considering the strength of the Tang family and how much importance they placed on protecting it and also the amount of attraction it caused for others, going so far as to provoke a tiger in order to obtain it, this item was no ordinary material. It should at least be at the 7th level. Or perhaps even higher. Jun Xie was not aware just how much resources grandfather Tang Wanli had spent in order to obtain this Xian core. This Xian core of a 9th-leveled golden-winged tiger Xian beast contained a huge amount of energy. For low-leveled Xian Qi experts, this Xian core was useless. However, once their cultivation were no longer of a low level, then under the right conditions and using certain methods of stimulation, the vast energies within could be absorbed and claimed as one's own. As for how much of the energies can be absorbed, that will depend on the person's talent. Once the earth rank was reached, every step forward in Xian Qi cultivation was accumulatively difficult. However, this Xian core could propel a beginner stage earth-ranked expert all the way up to the sky Xian stage. Within the world of Xian Qi, this item was a heavenly defying treasure. The difficulty level involved in killing even an 8th-leveled Xian beast was already extremely high. As for killing a 9th-leveled Xian beast in order to retrieve its Xian core, this was generally an impossibility. It was certain that a supreme divine expert held a good chance of defeating a 9th-leveled Xian beast. But killing it? Even if 2 supreme divine experts were to join hands, they may not be able to kill a 9th-leveled Xian beast. The strength and speed of a 9th-leveled Xian beast could be described as terrifying. But when it came to running away, no one could even dream of stopping it. Not to mention, this was a gold-winged tiger, a Xian beast with the ability to fly. Stopping it was something one would never even consider. Back then, Tang Wanli accidentally found a heavily injured supreme divine expert. When he found out that the expert possessed this Xian core, Tang Wanli spent a fortune to hire tens of jade, earth and sky ranked experts in order to snatch it. Several lives were lost before he successfully obtained it. Regardless of how that supreme divine expert laid his hands on the Xian core, it would be an exaggeration to claim that it was the only one in existence. However, one can be certain that in this world, the number of these Xian cores do not exceed 3. Naturally, the reason Li Yuran urgently desired this Xian core was because he had a pressing need to use it. His plan began since years ago from when he first received intelligence on this matter, involving the bribery of Tang family's figures, carefully arranging so that he could make his way in step by step, painstakingly keeping his eyes and ears out for any news until 3 months ago, when he finally found out the secret location of the item. However, grandfather Tang never left the house and was always protected by 4 high-leveled experts, resulting in him having no chance at all. This time, he finally chanced upon a rare opportunity. Not only did grandfather Tang leave the house, he even took with him 3 of the 4 experts. In addition, there was also the heavy rain, which made the situation even more favorable. Grasping onto these favorable factors, he sent a first-rate expert to lure away the expert from the Tang family before secretly sending in another 20 experts, collaborating with their insider. They finally succeeded, but at the cost of the life of nearly all the 20 experts. Even then, it was successful. Sacrificing the lives of merely a few experts in return for the Xian core was undoubtedly an advantageous trade. Unfortunately, just before they successfully finished everything, they ended up meeting Jun Xie. Several years' worth of meticulous planning, thousands of plans and 10,000 analyses. All of them ended with nothing to show for their efforts. It ended up benefiting others. One could only imagine how miserable Li Yuran currently was. This story will be continued to chapter 41. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.